Okay, we are live. Sorry for the late start, everybody. This is William Ramsey. William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a returning guest, very special guest. His name is Hans Utter, last name Utter. If you listen to my show, you've listened to him. I was counting off how many shows we've done, and it's in the mid 20s. So we've done 6 shows so far on the Manchurian Candidate, fiction to fact. And then going back, we've done stuff on Donald Campbell. Our first series was MK Ultra Music for the Masses. I think that was 7 or 8 parts. That was culture creation, and let's see, what was the other stuff? We did one on Soviet cybernetics, which was super interesting. We've covered Catcher in the Rye. We've covered the one Soviet Union was advanced Soviet research on cybernetics, biofield energetics, and cognitive restructuring. Kind of these are overlapping themes with the show that we're going to do today. And this one I've titled Listen to Me, the Ipcress File with Hans Utter of the Resonant State. So he's running his own podcast these days, and the title is The Resonant State. So check that out. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And we are going to, spoiler alert, that we're going to spoil this movie if you haven't seen it. It's hard to find. I couldn't find a copy of it. And it is the Ipcress File, starring Michael Caine, based on a Len Deighton book, or Deighton, Deighton. And it definitely follows the themes. I'm glad that Hans brought it to my attention. I watched it with great interest yesterday and today, and it's in the BFI, the British Film Institute's top 100 films, and justifiably, I think it's a great film, much like Manchurian Candidate. I didn't know how good it was, so go check out the film if you can find it, but I'm delighted to have Hans back on the show. So, Hans, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you so much, William. It's great to be here, and apologize for the late start.
It's all good.
If I could only like if you do yoga, right, there's supposed to be a siddhi where you can actually have like three bodies and be in three locations at the same time. So if I was able to do that, I would have been on time. But that's why I'm married, right? So
That your wife is your second body or something like that.
Well, yeah.
I've been there. It's 27 years for me, man. I've been married for a while. My wife and I have been together for 33 years, so I know who runs the show. But
well, yeah. So, anyways, we'll just dive right in here. And William, thanks again for having me here. And so this actually idea came up just because I'd been doing research, I actually, in these different things, and especially the filmic interpretation, how things are entered into the public consciousness, right? And how they connect with what was going on. So basically, like the Ipcress file is very much a product of the Cold War. It's a product of Cold War mind control. It is a product of, I think it's or a influenced by a number of books that came out in that period, including William Sargent's Battle for the Mind, which and William Sargent, though, even though in a sense, Battle for the Mind appears to be a big reveal, right? It appears to be like, oh, we're going to show you what's really going on. And I rereading the Battle for the Mind, I realized that, especially like, for example, the shows we've been doing, William, he's leaving out a lot of things, right? So you're not really going to understand mind control from William Sargent's book. The author of this book, it was his debut novel, his first novel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, his first novel, and it it became one of the most popular books in England. The movie came out, relatively quickly from following the book, which is quite. There's a lot of distinctions from the book, but the fundamental core concept is really mind control. The entire film is about mind control, right? The brain drain, the scientists wiping their minds, etc. And what's interesting, though, regarding the film is that it does reveal other aspects, right? It goes beyond Sargent's book, even though Sargent is considered to be, again, the author Lee stated that was his major influence.
Lee Dighton is still alive. It's unbelievable. The guy's 96 years old, so he's like a living piece of history. I don't know how many books he wrote. Like, do you know what his corpus is? His full corpus? I don't know.
You know, I really, it's kind of like the only book I know is the Ipcress Files. You know, and it's kind of like one of those. I think he wrote that book. This was such a hit, to my knowledge, that this is kind of his. I only know him for this work, and that's my own,
Gotcha.
my own, not ignorance, but
See if we
this.
can find something on his. I thought he was a very prolific author. I could be wrong. Yeah, he
Yeah,
wrote the Ipcress File, Funeral in Berlin, Berlin Game. I guess there were Harry Palmer series. So this character that is enshrined in the Ipcress File went on to kind of like be a James Bond. So I think he did a lot of different books with this guy.
Which and the thing is that actually for those who haven't seen the movie, I definitely recommend it. I think it's one of Michael Caine's best films. I mean, it's definitely it's very well acted, and so Michael Caine has his character. How would you describe him, William? Would you say
He's supposedly let out of jail and brought into Intel, and he's portrayed kind of like not as like a kind of like guy like Bond. I'm comparing him to a Bond character. He's a little bit more peculiar. He's cultured. He likes music. He likes to cook. So it's kind of like he's not like the overbearing macho guy, but he's also a little bit stiff-necked or whatever. He's cantankerous and he's like a little bit lippy to his superiors. So I'd see him kind of in that vein. But what's your thoughts about him offhand or his
yeah?
character,
Well,
Harry Palmer?
he's very cheeky, right?
Yeah,
And he comes across as kind of we say a loafer, slacker, but yet he's able to dial in all these connections in the film, and in the book as well, which I got about halfway through. But I mean, the whole time in the book, it makes it very clear that he and Dalton, like his superior officer, he hates the guy. He hates the guy, and the guy is actually holding this prison sentence. So he was running a clandestine goods, basically selling, making money in post-war Germany, right? And that is a very essential reference point, though. Why? Because everything that all the stuff done from the 30s, 40s, etc., was rolled out in Germany. This was the test lab. Post-war Germany, Ewan Cameron was in charge of the entire country for this psychological operations protocol. There are many, many, um, multiple directionalities in this, including the Morgenthau plan, right, which was initially in place to it was a plan of complete genocide, right? It was kill the Germans. I mean, literally starve the Germans out, reduce them to a neo-feudal state.
yeah. They wanted to return everything to a pastoral state, like to reduce Germany to nothing. So it's really crazy. Like, I don't know,
Yeah,
screaming out there.
and they were, I mean, they were at the point of they wanted to. I mean, the Morgenthau plan, which of course it was so extreme, they were literally it was pure genocide, right? Even the males sterilize the men that are breeding era or send them off to different countries, destroy agriculture, literally starve, kill 60-70% of the population. It was a straight genocidal plan, literally.
And part of it was carried out. Like a lot of it's a kind of an ugly history of America. I mean, the war is ugly, but there were definitely concentration camps that Germans were put in by Americans, not by just the Russians. Yeah. So
More Germans died after the war than during the war. And you have, I mean, I wasn't going to talk about this, but since we hit this particular point, because I just want to stress that there's a lot of things embedded in this. Again, so the post-war Germany, he was somehow doing a black market ring of some sort, right? The character, but then back to post-war Germany. So the you have these death camps, right? Eisenhower literally had open air death camps where The troops were there with no food, no water in these muddy fields. They try to get out, they get shot, and they just starved to death and died. And they killed millions of people that way. Plus the invading hordes from Soviet Union, rape gangs, right? Everything. These were the crazy. They got and there's a lot of great people in there's many different regions in Soviet Union, right? Completely different types of people. There's Kazakhstan. I mean, they're literally descendants of Genghis Khan. Everybody there is descendant of Genghis Khan. You go to the airport, man, they are so rude. They just don't care. They don't smile, and but they're literally, but I'm saying they got some very hardcore, you know, hordes, literally like hordes to invade. Okay.
So the Soviet Union or Russia is probably more multi-ethnic than the United States. Like they have ethnicities all over, and Stalin recruited Mongols, literal Mongols, to invade Germany. So like the Germans are like, who are these people? They're literal Mongol. Yeah, like they're literally looking like Genghis Khan. Yeah.
And they had these flyers say rape and kill, rape and kill. I mean, that's what they were directed to do. They were directed and they were whipped up in frenzy. So, anyways, Germany survived that. Then the real mind, well, so this obviously was too extreme of a program, right? And so it was, I believe it was MacArthur that got this shelved, so to speak, and they also realized that without Germany, the Soviet, I mean, the communism was just going to spread throughout Europe, right? Germany was a bulwark, so we need them as an ally. And it was obviously Patton was assassinated because he saw what was going on, and so that's why General George Patton was killed. He was assassinated, 100%. I mean, they assassinated him because he saw this barbarism, right? So he was a great general. He was a man of honor, and and because he's was against the plan, he was assassinated. But after that, they rolled, or even in conjunction, they rolled out all of these psychological operations, hypnosis, mind control, cultural engineering, social engineering, the Kinderladen. You know about the Kinderladen movement?
Tell me about that. I don't recall that one.
The Kinderladen movement was so without getting into too much detail, basically a film was made, right? There was a prominent German actress who was in the US. They had a film that was basically semi-pornographic with rape, suicide, this kind of thing, that was censored. There was a sort of a legion of decency, right, run by a priest that had been going for quite a while. And so they tried to put a stop to that film, but that film became sort of this free speech bulwark. After that, Kinsey came. Kinsey was there very briefly, but Kinsey was actually, you know, Kinsey became an icon of scientific research, and it brought, because initially Germany was flooded with pornography. Every newsstand, everything like that, there's a huge movement against it, right? This, the pornography and this and that. So, um, like in this process, basically, the Kinsey and in these there's court cases, etc. And it became, if you're against free love and pornography,
Right.
then you're a Nazi. Okay.
Right. That's it. The fascists. That was what the fascists were repressed. That was the common view, is that sexual repression led to authoritarianism. Right.
Yeah.
Kinsey's Sexuality in the Human Male was 1948, if I remember. That's when it was published.
Yeah. And so, in this period, the thing was that all of these things that have happened, sort of a slow burn in the United States, right? They were because they had top down control. So all of these aspects, all of these mind control, and lots of different things. Again, Ewan Cameron was in charge of this. Mr. Ewan Cameron and many other people, including, early also psychedelic research, etc. I mean, psychedelic research meaning, psychedelic mind control. But so the Kinderladen movement was it was an, an injected educational movement introducing kindergartners and preschoolers to sex. Like literally,
Wow.
it was a complete I mean, it is so
I looked at
twist.
the Google pictures. I don't think I can show them. It's like pedophilia, man. Like a
I
bunch of
mean,
kids rocking around naked with
I
adults
mean,
and
no,
stuff.
they had like, I mean, it, in the name of it literally means, okay, so this, uh, okay, this was in the 1970s, but this, again, this is starting from this initial blowback to, again, mass importation of pornography. Also, who was in Germany? The Beatles, right? Where did the Beatles get their start?
That's right.
This is the rollout also of rock and roll, right? This is a, rollout of rock and roll, literally.
And they're
Um,
trying to you and Cameron did studies on, like, how do we stop this from happening again? Like, how do we stop the horrors of war, you know? A lot of those guys is into, Marcuse was thinking about that, if I remember. So all these guys, Adorno, a lot of these guys are talking, like, how do we change society so that this doesn't happen again? Which is kind of weird because the Nazis were pretty kinked out. Like, they weren't I don't think they were that repressed, honestly. I think the people who analyze them were projecting these things because they saw these external marches and order. But if you look down the line of Hitler and all those guys, like Bormann had 10 kids and Goebbels had 2 wives, and these guys were encouraged to have wives out of wedlock and really, increase themselves. So there's something about the analysis and the conclusions that are, to me, are questionable. But even these kind of high level philosophers and psychiatrists or psychologists like Cameron and Marcuse, I don't agree with them fully.
well, no, no, no. I mean, this was the Frankfurt School, right? Authoritarian personality, but being able to roll it out, like imagine this stuff is enforced, right? Like, so, like, imagine, like, say for what we're saying now, we go to jail, right? So the DEI was enforced, right? But this is 2020, 2020 or whatever. I mean, it took a long time for this stuff to be dissipated in America, but Germany was this very closed system laboratory. Okay,
Right, right.
with all these players. But so yeah, the Kinderladen movement literally means in English child shops. And
Yeah, it's almost like something for sale, right?
yeah, and it was, I mean, it was promoting, teaching kids how to masturbate, having, I don't want to go into it, it's disgusting, right? I mean, having, introducing, you know, kindergartners, first graders, second graders, daycare centers it was into sexuality. Like, I mean, as I mean,
It's like promoting pedophilia, but with like little infants and kids and stuff, like really dark, super evil. Like
yeah,
yeah. But I think it's like a weird response to the brutality of that time. I mean, imagine 60 million people dead and just total chaos,
but
like total craziness.
no, what I'm saying though, this was a outgrowth of what happened with the controversy. And I apologize that I'm forgetting the name of they're very famous German actress who starred in many Third Reich films, right? She went to Hollywood, came back in this film that became very controversial. There was lots of protests.
Is it Ute Herb?
I
Ute?
believe,
Oh yeah, I don't know.
yeah, it was kind of late 40s, and so this sort of Legion of Decency, of Germany, was there were protests all over the country, and then of course Kinsey is there as, oh, this is science, right?
Right.
And so, basically, so that's the context of saying, okay, he's there in Germany, and that's, very important that, again, and when I did, research into, I did that series with Jan Irvin at Gnostic Media. So when I found that Germany, I said all the mind control stuff is really, you find it Germany 1945 to 1955, that decade, everything came out of that, but this was the controlled laboratory. This
Right.
was every aspect can be done in, um, with resistance from the population. But again, it's a controlled population, right? So
Right. It's divided into 4 sections, right? English, French, American, Russian, like for a year, and split in half, like West and East Germany. Like Germany was controlled in a big bad way for a long time. Yeah. And also Cameron, for people don't know, like he was sent by Alan Dulles specifically to analyze Hess, who was the number 3 guy on the Third Reich. Like, so he's around. He was around all that stuff. I mean, this is all This is all factual stuff, Who went on to McGill and all this crazy stuff. And friends with Sargent too, by the way. So
Yeah, yeah, and so that's also very, again, very important because we're looking at. So, for example, like the Communist Manifesto, this was written for not necessarily for like the really high level elite, but it's written for the literate class. Okay, it's written for the the not the super high level intelligentsia, not the people that are at think tanks, but for the intellectual upper middle class, whatever what to call it, those that level, which is much larger than the elite, but it has it gives a certain portion of the doctrine, but it is not the full thing, right? It is a presentation. It is it's a teaser. It's also a misdirection. So, um, we could maybe real quick. Um, well, let me just say, okay, back to the Ipcress file. So, Ipcress file, the whole plot is based upon mind control with a great character. I mean, Harry Palmer. I wish they made 20 Harry Palmer films. I mean, I actually like him better than James Bond.
it
I think
kind of made me want to it made me want to watch movies with all the Englishmen, the proper, well dressed Englishmen, and proper English language. Like it was fun to watch that.
yeah, and he sort of comes across in his professional life as this working class guy, but he loves to cook and he only listens to West classical music. So that there's a subtle um just to recollect, this is where did the swinging London, right? People, we talk about Haight Ashbury, but the real sort of introduction of the psychedelic world in terms of a movement and artistic thing was swinging London, right? Swinging London, 1967, et cetera. All the Beatles, all that stuff. So the music aspect is also linked to this, but and so the espionage, it's playing on anxiety, it's giving information, but again, I think in the film and in the book itself, it's revealing much more than William Sargent did, right? It's even though the cited basis. Right? He said, I wrote this book because of this this thing. Can I share screen with just I've got the
Of
book
course.
over.
It is interesting. It does tie over with Bond in the sense that Saltzman, the producer, if you look at the poster for the film, Saltzman was there with Albert Broccoli, and he had produced Goldfinger, From Russia with Love, Doctor No, so all those Bond ones, and then Ipcress Files, 1965.
Yeah. And so yeah, you can see that cover
Let
there.
me see if I can get that up. There we go.
It should be sharing.
Yeah, I have to take this off.
So
The split brain, right? The white black. There it is.
yeah, left, right. And that's the mechanics of indoctrination, brainwashing, and thought control. And so this is the big reveal of these techniques. And again, most of them are posited as being emanations of the Soviet Union, right? So they, and that's the thing, even though the release of this book is part of the induction of the Western population, especially again with the knowledge gleaned from the experimental, your test tube, your scientific environment of Germany, right? Post-war Germany. So you can, I mean, that was it. So, but one of the things we were mentioning in the pre-show, and again, I always stress that it's very important to see the exact presentation of this is information, right? This is the prisoner, the show, the prisoner, information. We want information. This is injection of information. This is an input into the larger cultural system, right? This relates to the psychological topology of Kurt Lewin, right? Aggregate group structures in putting an input. Your input is this information. So, what do you want to just read this? The blurb, back of the book blurb.
Sure. How can an evangelist convert a hard boiled sophisticate? Why does a PW sign a confession he knows is false? How is a criminal pressured into admitting his guilt? Do the evangelist, the PW's captor, and the policeman use similar methods to gain their ends? These and other compelling questions are discussed in Battle for the Mind. William Sargent, a leading physician in psychological medicine, spells out and illustrates the basic technique used by evangelists, psychiatrists, and brainwashers to disperse the patterns of belief and behavior already established in the minds of their hearers and to substitute new patterns for them. And then the blurbs are: this work is timely in our period of brainwashing, hidden persuaders, and the increasing dilution of psychiatry with mysticism and religion. It will stimulate the informed person interested in techniques devised by men in power to control the thought and destiny of their fellow man. That's New York State Journal of Medicine. I wonder who wrote that. And then the Providence Sunday Journal. This book is of immense significance for any person concerned with the ideological battle for the minds of men now being waged between communist and anti-communist forces around the world. By this definition, then, the book should be must reading for every person who takes the trouble to exercise at all his precious capacity to think.
Okay, so interesting, a little bit odd, right? PW, prisoner of war, right? Sign a confession. How does a criminal pressured into admitting his guilt? So notice there's a shifting of levels. Do the evangelist. So now you have an evangelist put into this mix, right? Which is one of the biggest focal points of the book is conversion, right? By priests or pastors or evangelical religion, right? So that's a big focal point. Use some, gain their ends. These, other compelling questions, a leading physician in psychological medicine. So what is that exactly, right? Psychological medicine. Is that, is this an actual domain or a field? It may be. I'm not aware of that as being a separate discipline, but notice spells. So he has spells. That word spell really stands out. So there is, in a sense, you look spells, mysticism, and religion. So in a sense, this book is a spell this is sort of revealed in this text, at least to me, right? So so as we go on, let's go very quickly. Pelican, bargain. Okay, there we go. So physiology of conversion, Christian conversion, and brainwashing. That's number one. Notice that. Okay, this is just showing you the weighting or valencing of the book, right? You go back to that intro and you see that first paragraph of these people. How does an evangelist convert a hard-boiled sophisticate? Right there. Okay, so it is immediately, you could say, conflating. It's linking conversion, spiritual or Christian conversion, with mind control. See that?
Right.
And it's not it's not hidden that much, right? It's right there in the title. Physiology of conversion and brainwashing. But so conversion, it's in the back of your mind. You're reading it. It's already, even though they, in a sense, you're reading it in the hyped up atmosphere of the Cold War. You're thinking of, how does someone become like a Manchurian candidate? How does someone become converted to communism? How does someone become an agent? Right? How does someone? So that's there, but actually, it goes into Christian conversion. So this is, but look at this first quote. You got to read that if you like.
Sure. Just enlarge it. We still have much to learn as to the laws according to which the mind and body act on one another, and according to which one mind acts on another. But it is certain that a great part of this mutual action can be reduced to general laws and that the more we know of such laws, the greater our power to benefit others will be. If, when through the operation of such laws, surprising events take place, and we cry out, such is the will of God, instead of setting ourselves to inquire whether it was the will of God to give us power to bring about or prevent these results, then our conduct is not piety, but sinful laziness. George Salmon, A Sermon on the Work of the Holy Spirit, 1859.
Very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Interesting quote. So, again, the subtle conflation is that this not even subtle, right? It's showing that even this guy, maybe this guy's doing mind control as well, right? This
Right.
sermon,
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That there's an element to it in these like evangelists and priests and pastors and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And so, um, when in fact this is learning the law. So I just want to say the implication of this is that this is what is being done by the mind control. So now you've conflated communism and Christianity. So, and that's in a certain degree, you say that's a subtle architecture of this book. Okay, we'll skip, acknowledgments, nothing that interesting there. For enthusiasm, Sigmund Freud.
I do have a picture of Sargent somewhere. Maybe I can pull that up because he's an interesting guy. He's connected to a lot of stuff. And if people have read or listened to Huxley's The Ultimate Revolution, he mentions Sargent. He mentions him. So this guy who's also influenced Dighton is around. Like he's around in kind of the common culture. And Huxley's a very important popularizer of these kind of things. The ultimate revolution is you're going to love your servitude. So crazy.
Yeah. And so again, this book, and maybe William, you can go a little in Sargent's background. While it purports to be this expose, right, of mind control, is actually a vector of mind control to a certain degree, right? It is depending on your positionality. So I'll start just kind of in the middle. I'll read this.
Okay.
So yet history records the angry outcry, even when Newton tried to disentangle the simple mechanics of gravity from its religious aspects. A deeply religious man himself, he was accused of trying to destroy religious faith in others. He could only answer that his work was concerned not with the ultimate question of why something happens, but with the immediate question of how it happens. And I must make the same plea for this very much humbler inquiry. Many people have pointed out quite rightly that the ultimate test of both religious and political values is not definable in terms of how it happens, but of what is achieved. Okay. Well, is that true? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I think process is quite important if you're talking about mind control, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, what is achieved, the resultants can be different between different subjects, right? I mean, so, but okay, I'll just finish this page. My concern here is not with the immortal soul, which is the province of the theologian, nor even with the mind in the broadest sense of the word, which is the providence of the philosopher, but with the brain and nervous system, which man shares with dogs and other animals. Yet it is through this material brain that emissaries of the God or the devil, dictators, policemen, politicians, priests, physicians, and psychotherapists of various sorts may all try to work their will on man. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Wild. And he wrote other books, right? He wrote The Possessed Mind. I think this wasn't his own. The Battle for the Mind wasn't his only one. This is what it looked like. Let me see if I can bring this up. Here he is. This is Sargent, 1975. There's his Mind Possessed book right there on the side table too.
The psychiatrist obsessed with reprogramming minds. So again, there was a lot of literature that came out in sort of in this period that and this relates also, of course, to the broader cultural stream. And film is probably more, at a certain degree, more important. So again, just to highlight, we don't have to spend much more time on Sargent, but it's that this guy was connected with these actual mind control programs himself, right? He was an operator,
Right.
and so, um, and I'll talk about another book from around slightly earlier, but related to this. Um, so Barbara O'Brien's book, Operators and Things, right? This ties directly into that. So this book was very essential. Okay. And this book was very odd as well, right? So um this book really describes she basically, the author, um who you know, Barbara O'Brien, supposedly, she went insane. And she thought that she was being mind controlled, and there was two classes of people: the operators, who were the controllers, and the things, because the things were the population. They became
Wow, bunch of
objects.
things,
Or,
right?
yeah, and so it's called, the subtitle, the colophon is The Inner Life of a Schizophrenic. So it is a really, really trippy book. And so Barbara O'Brien, in this book, um, she basically, describes all of these processes where um, she says she had stress at her job, so she became schizophrenic, and then she's in this whole different world, right? So she's in the same place we are, but she's surrounded by these whole architecture of mind control, and realized that the population had become things, and they were controlled by these operators that were using all these vectors, including media, including everything, right? And so it basically, um, the odd thing about operators and things, so it comes down to, um, so the so basically there's a hidden class of beings that are manipulating people. Okay, so she has, again, her breakdown. She has stress at her office, and she becomes schizophrenic for 6 months and writes this best-selling book. um, a brief summary: she awakens one morning to see three gray, wispy figures at her bedside, who she calls operators. These operators, they tell her that they're a hidden class of beings who manipulate ordinary people, called things, by influencing their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And the things don't realize it, right? So human beings are things, operators and things.
That's the dynamic, right? Is that these guys think we're like hackable, you know, Darwinian, items, right? So that's the way these heavy duty psychiatrists, whether it's Cameron or Norbert Wiener or Sargent or something, is like these are people that can just be hacked, much like the imposition of like ideas on Germans. Like we can just drop this whole thing, like you were saying, like these operators, we can do it to a whole country and reformat the whole country, right?
Yeah. And so basically, so she is given insight into the inner world of the operators. And so they have a particular system of, you could say, their own social credit. So the operators themselves, they accrue points by directing suffering, disease, or disruption, distress in things. The more the operator can disturb or influence or control, the more points they get. So,
Interesting.
and so Barbara is told she's been selected for an experiment. She is a thing. She's allowed to observe the actual operational uh, protocols or paradigms of the operators, right? So she can observe these workings, and then she's placed in danger between these warring factions of the operators. And then she goes across the US in a Greyhound bus. She's trying to avoid the avoid the operators and trying to awaken other people to this mind control. And then she describes like scalloping her mental structure, which they call lattice work. They cut a piece of the mental structure out, and so this but what's very interesting, so they're looking at invisible power dynamics and control. The system of the lattice work is like mental habits. This is conditioning of the reticular activating system as well as habitual conditioning. And then basically her insight is that she realizes that, oh, this is just my subconscious programming me, and I'm perfectly fine now. And she just disappeared, and people, tracked her down. I forget,
So this is her only book? Is this one?
yeah.
Operators and Things? Wow.
And she just, I don't know if you can, if you get the page. Yeah. And so she wrote this book, and then she just said, oh, I was crazy. And all this was just my subconscious had taken me over. And then she disappeared, and she never wrote another thing. And they tracked her down. And she just was living a normal life. She says, I don't want to talk about it. Look who said Artie Lang.
Right. That's very telling. Like he's something or something else. He would know. That guy was kind of an new age kind of guy, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, Artie Lang was, really essential to the whole thing, which is being, again, back to the Ipcress files, and why I'm doing sort of this background is the Ipcress files is a preview of the psychedelic 60s in a certain way, right? With the mind control patterning, with the sound patterning,
Right.
the light.
And the visuals, the lighting, and very strange camera placements, right? Like unusual sets and unusual camera placements in the film. Did you notice that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it's, I mean, like I said, it's a great, it's probably worth even another watch. And I think that it ties into the show The Prisoner a lot. I think The Prisoner also, reveals that, but fundamentally the Ipcress Files is it is bringing the cybernetics into which operators and things. That's a cybernetic model, right? So we have in the cybernetics, this is where we have our entire modern world is running off of the insights gleaned during the Macy conferences, during this particular structuring of governance, right? Creating governance, self-governing.
It ties into our modern kind of culture. It's cybernetics is like a precursor to the matrix. Everybody knows the word matrix in the application of that concept through the film and stuff like that. But the cybernetics and all the stuff you're talking about going on in Germany, these are the precursors leading up to the kind of the modern conceptualization of that, or Truman Show or something like that, right? And this is what happens in the movie. Like for people who haven't seen the movie, I'm going to ruin it, but he's basically he thinks he's somewhere else. He thinks he's in Albania at a certain point, which ties into The Prisoner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah. So anyways, this is kind of the environment. So we have Sergeant, and I mentioned operators and things because these are, I would say, feeding points into this particular media expression, which is actually quite different from Manchurian Candidate, is it not, in terms of the mind control?
Yes. Yeah. There are you get kind of similar ideas, like these kind of titles of sophisticated academic treatises, which is what Ipcress is. It's an acronym, right? It's an acronym for induction of psychoneuroses by conditioned reflex under stress. Like these are all kind of stuff like that happens in Manchurian Candidate, or trauma-based mind control is just stress-based, hyper stress-based mind control, right? It's synonymous, similar.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ipcress, I mean, what's interesting again is that the title of the book is this acronym, right? So like in the film, he finds, so William, since you watch it, you want to just give like it's sort of just an overview of the film?
Yeah, I mean, it involves this guy we talked about. Michael Caine plays Harry Palmer, who's a cop. He's brought into intel, so you get this backdrop of Cold War paranoia. But you find out later that he's brought in by one guy to try to figure out who the mole. There's a mole in there, and he's sent out to kind of follow people. Seems to be kind of a low level kind of guy. And then there's a guy with the film starts with the abduction of a scientist, a Radcliffe on a train sequence. And what happens is he switched out with another person, and then his kind of like security guard ends up getting shot, right? So they're trying to figure out where the real Radcliffe and who is this fake guy. And so Michael Caine's character, this guy, what is it, Harry Palmer, is following him around, and then people start getting betrayed. There's like stakeouts and things like that. There's an assassin. Somebody tries to kill him, and then he gets captured. And you realize that what happens is Radcliffe is purchased back from this other guy. I think it's Dalby or Granby. I think it is the character who they purchased, but the real Radcliffe who's been abducted, and they find out he's been mentally tampered with. Him amongst 17 other scientists, right? And so then they're figuring out why it happened. They got bad goods. They want their money back because they paid like £25,000 for him, or £20,000. And then it kind of comes all the way back. And then Harry Palmer's abducted. He goes through the treatment. He gets kind of mind zapped, but he draws himself. He puts himself under his own pain to kind of avoid this sensory overload, this kind of induction of psychoneuroses that they went through other people. And he's supposedly programmed with this trigger word, which I included in this title, which is "Listen to Me." And then they discover that I think it's Lord or Major Dalby is the kind of mole. He finds that out. We find that out. The viewer finds it out before Michael Caine's character does, and then it's resolved by Dalby getting shot. And he figures it out. He breaks his conditioning. It's kind of like reminiscent of Manchurian Candidate in the sense like you don't know how conditioned Caine's character is. Then he kind of breaks the conditioning, and it resolves the entire film as they find the mole, and you figure out what the Ipcress file really is doing. And he had read it, so he had the book, which was taken from his house at a certain point. So they're trying to figure out all these kind of spy for side. So there's external spy story, it's almost like something from Le Carre. There's the external kind of mole story, but there's also internal spying going on. He's being spied on by his own boss. So it's kind of ornate and complex, but it's a really great movie. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a great film. But one of the things is that the distinction. So Sargent's book, he's talking again about religious conversion. He's talking about Pavlovian basic operant conditioning patterns, right? And so, you necessarily bring it up, but I'll just read a paragraph just real quick from the Sargent book. As soon as Pavlov expressed a desire to apply his experimental findings on animal behavior to the problems of morbid psychology in human beings. So, wait, you're trying to help morbid psychology? You're trying to induce morbid psychology? I don't know. But anyways, the Soviet government placed a nearby psychiatric clinic at his disposal. His first public lecture on the topic was delivered in 1930. He called it the trial excursion of a physiologist in the field of psychiatry. Well, you can. I've got it open, that share page. You can bring it up.
All right.
Sorry. So the trial excursions of it. So again, most of this was physiology, right? Physiology, endocrinal system. Okay, we're looking. So that's very important. I want people just to remember that or lock that in. When we talk, you can talk about quote unquote psychology, thought processes, this and that. We get into the physiology, neurophysiology, operations of the brainstem, operations of the ascending and descending reticular formations, reticular activating systems, which are basically the framing mechanisms of reality, right? What you perceive, standing, waking, sleeping consciousness, and the endocrinal system, the glandular system. This is very, very important. And these are a different level of induction than just simple operant conditioning. Okay. So this is what's being obscured, but it's also being revealed, right? In a certain way. If that makes sense. Okay. I'll continue. Um, it may be of new, it may be that these new interests date from an operation for gallstones that he underwent in 1927, because he then published his significant a post-operative cardiac neurosis analyzed by the patient, Ivan Petrov Pavlov. So I don't know, a post-operative cardiac neuroses. How do you have a cardiac neurosis? Isn't that your heart? It's a functional organ. But um, I have not read that book. But go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, this is published in '57. The book comes out in '65, so it's kind of contemporary. And like a lot of that stuff, Pavlov, is mentioned in Manchurian Candidate. Like he's from the Yan Lo is from the Pavlov Institute, so they definitely are from that same era.
Yeah, so he goes through, and so just to know, like when you're reading this kind of book, there's a type of induction, right? So the reader is almost thinking of themselves as a dog. The way that word dog is placed, spell, mysticism, that's the spell cast on the inattentive reader. So you're the dog, right? So just and right here, I'm skipping to the middle paragraph of that page 4. The first of these, so he's talking about the types of the dogs, the temperamental categories of the dogs, right? Their temperaments. The first of these correspond with Hippocrates, right? The Hippocratic oath. Huh, that kind of went out the window, right?
Yeah, they
So
got rid of that one during the mind control stuff.
yeah,
Like I think there's even a book like about that. That like it's a play on the Hippocratic Oath because they burned it up. It's about like the negative effects of mind control. I
yeah.
have it in my archive somewhere.
But anyways, so the dog types, Hippocrates, caloric type, um, Pavlov named the strong excitatory. So we have the inhibitory and excitatory. Um, these are terms that were very important. You could call it's arousal and rest, right? Which actually is the reticular ascending and descending reticular formation, which good luck finding any. This is something that has been excluded from most scientific research, yet there's nothing more fundamental than that, because it is the basic framing of what your brain allows you to perceive. It is the framing of your entire world. It is the filter of your consciousness. So this is very, 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 very important. Okay. And but anyways, so basically we have the strong excitatory, but this is the excitatory and inhibitory, which means like you've got your the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. You have like adrenal response and all this stuff. This is doom scrolling. Okay. This is getting these um induction, which is not mentioned in this book. It's induction of neuroses by getting both the you could say the aversion and attraction response, you know, the waking and rest, the excitation and the pushing away from that operating at the same time, which creates a shutdown. It creates like poof, right? And this is where you find a lot of these practices, therapies induce this. Okay. That's what LSD, these things induce flashing lights, strobe lights, right? The flashing lights. How important was that for the counterculture? It was central.
Right. It's in this film. It's almost like a trippy. It preceded all that stuff, just like you said. Like this film kind of preceded that kind of sensory, audio, and visual overload.
Yeah. And so, anyways, this goes on, and we'll you can stop the book. But then he goes a bit in the Pavlov stuff, but again, with not a very clear I'll stop sharing. Not a very clear analysis of it, really, in truth, right? It's not really showing you the real mechanisms and the real, um, generational facilities. In fact, it's inducing a type of mind control on the reader,
Yeah.
you know. So but
It's interesting because he was doing really heavy duty stuff like you and Cameron, ECT, psychosurgery, like really dark, unethical stuff in real life. It's probably not in that book. I haven't read A Battle for the Mind, but I suspect the darker aspects that he was doing and Cameron were doing. They were really mad scientists, like crazy stuff. And focusing on women too. That's kind of the weird thing is what you find out is like I had this woman, Elizabeth Nixon. It's like they were really going after like rich, intelligent women for some strange reason. Maybe it's like their own, erotic fixation or something like that. I don't know. But it seems like a lot of this hypnosis used by men, whether it's Bailey, Belli, Brian, Cameron, Sargent, is used on power over women.
well, I mean, you can look at the pickup artist culture, right? That's using NLP. This was huge, right? Especially like in your region of the country.
Oh, those
I
guys
mean,
have made livings on that, like pickup culture. And I mean, isn't Tate and his kind of thing, isn't that how to get women or pimps and hoes? That's their PhD is pimps and hoes degree. Like power over women too. Like they get them to stream and take. That's how they made their money. Power over women, get them to stream. Then they would come in the back and act like the women and just get people to donate tons of money. That's my understanding. That's what I heard.
yeah, no,
So
it was almost like a cult. I mean, and
yeah,
I have
I've heard that.
this stuff. A friend of mine bequeathed it to me. Unfortunately, he no longer. He passed away. It was like some $1,000 course, audio course. I only I listened to like one CD. It's like you go. I won't. But it's all these hypnotic techniques to use on women. You're literally hypnotizing women. You're making women into you're creating trigger points. You're using different
Wow. So
footwork.
they use the word trigger and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Oh wow.
framing, you create like, just like a touch at a certain point, right?
Right.
You do a touch that you have that cued, the framing. I remember the I did not. I don't want anybody to think that I went through the whole CD set. The first CD, but it's like you say, like, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was
Wow.
white as snow, or whatever. And basically they're teaching Ericksonian hypnosis as well. And
Wow.
it's NLP, Ericksonian hypnosis, reframing, triggering, setting up anchor points that you can re-trigger, building the anchor
Wow. They're
point.
doing that. They had a course on that. That's incredible. I had no idea.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not surprised. I'm not surprised because I think that's what Brian and Belli and Bailey were doing. They were like Casanovas is a nice way of putting it. I would say like Lothario or something, but like they were. My understanding is rapacious. Like I think that Bailey started a skin mag. I think we was started by Bailey or F. Lee Bailey or something like. So I'm not surprised they knew hypnosis. Like, and you see that in this film. The induction technique is used on Michael Caine's character, right? Like he's talking real slow. You're gonna do this. Forget about the Ipcress noise. All this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's in there. Like these techniques, they're not consciously explaining it, but you see him like the calm voice, the getting him prepped, the stress induction, the chair, kind of almost exactly like Clockwork Orange. But this precedes Clockwork Orange. It definitely has Clockwork Orange vibes to me.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but in terms of the, you say hypnotic induction on women, with the woman you can control the man, right? How many presidents, how many world leaders have actually been controlled by their wives? Many,
Many.
you know.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. I mean, it's kind of like where you go after. It's kind of like the other link. Like they're not suspecting it, but wow, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. This film is really wild too. Like they use certain words, like the major Dolby is like, is he programmed? Like they're actually using these program terms. They're trying to figure out if the programming worked. And then the other guy from Albania is like, well, I could have used a couple more sessions. And it's stuck in this kind of sensory deprivation thing. Like you can see him writing the days. So he's kind of like in a sensory deprivation chamber for 10 days or something like that, right? At least.
Yeah, yeah. So again, so in he finds out he's transferred, he's under the the threat of going back to jail for what he did in Germany. the Palmer character, and then he's transferred to this particular thing, and he immediately starts doing it. Finds the guy who's kidnapped the scientist, um, and then and then when they get the scientist back, right, he's he's gone, right? His mind has been wiped because there's the sound also, right? They play the sound. So this is very important. The unique thing of this movie is this sonal induction, frequency induction, right? Not just not necessarily hypnotic techniques, but frequency weaponry, scalar wave, whatever. Go ahead.
Right, and it's not like a nice pleasant sound. It's like a very high pitched kind of shriek or something like that. That they find for people who haven't seen, they go to a warehouse, they get a tip, they don't find anything in there. They You can see the device that's used to hypnotize people. They don't know what it is, right? This kind of cross where they hang people on it or whatever, or hang the box that they put people in, and they pull out of the incinerator this Ipcress tape, which is probably high technology for that time, right? Now it looks like something ancient, but that was how the recording tapes worked in the 60s. And it has the Ipcress file on there. And then they looped it, and that's how they got the noise, right?
Yeah, and so that sound, it's actually, it's lots of different sounds, kind of weird, um, uh, you know, kind of like Moog synthesizer. In fact, this very early though that those electronic noises, they had for that film, but this absolutely ties in to what was coming in with the psychedelic rock, which was just around the corner, was it not? I mean,
Yeah, it was right there.
it was right there, and so in a sense, what is the psychedelic rock concert? What is going to see Pink Floyd, right?
It's the
At
same box that Michael Caine or Harry Palmer was in, right? It's the same
Exactly,
kind of
right? So they put him in this box, which is like the media box, and there's another book called The Private Future, right? And that came out early 70s. So the book The Private Future talks about every human being being put into their own sort of bubble, right? Their media bubble, right? You have your headset on, you have, your virtual reality, obviously way before virtual reality, but they're talking about the private future, but not private as in you have privacy, but private that you're enclosed in this sensorial field, right? And
It's happened, Hans, it's happened. Like
yeah,
that, they call it an echo chamber today, but like those some people are locked into their own box, man. Like I know people who get up in the morning, all they do is listen to Fox News from dawn till dusk. I'm not joking. Like they are in a box, so-called right-wing box, but like I think the left has its own echo chambers. If you listen to NPR or something like that,
NPR. Oh my gosh, I haven't listened to NPR for a while.
bro, it's horrible. It's like torture. You want to talk about psychological torture? They're torturing their own listeners, and then you have to hang out with the listeners, and you're like, "Whoa, where are you getting your information?" Well, I watch NPR, and they're like, "You're gone, baby. You've been washed clean, acid washed by NPR." Wow, that's bad.
But it's interesting though. They have like I'm sure she's a wonderful lady, like Terry Gross or whatever. Even if they replace them, they all have the same type of NPR voices, right?
Yeah.
It's got this kind of snarky, I know better than you do.
Moral
Uh,
superiority, right? Don't you think?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, but so that being said, so again in the film, so Ipcress, which is I don't know if that relates to another another word, because I don't think it was a used acronym, but I wonder if there's something encoded in that, in the word Ipcress, like there's another word like it, if it had some other
No, I
meaning
don't know.
that I didn't I did not ascertain, um, but
But he, like you've always emphasized in our shows, the sound. And I recall, just remember when he said that the programmer, I want to fit the rhythm of the sound and vision to the pattern of his brain waves. So like that was very important, is rhythm and sound in that process. Like that's what he was doing to Harry Palmer. Pretty wild. It's a wild piece of like dialogue.
Yeah, and there's some like weird numerology, um, of this, and this is like, again, the numerology, like you have number one, which is the individual mind, leadership, autonomy, a new cycle of awareness, um, being reduced or inducted into a control system, structure, control, and system. So you have basically the numbers 1, 3, 4. So okay, I won't go too much into this, but again, you know, some of these things, the numerology, you don't have to believe in it, but it's certainly there, and especially when things are sort of positioned in the collective mind. But so in the brainwashing sequences in the movie, though, um, it the film used developments in cybernetics, multimedia design, including like modern theater, right? We think about the theater, right? What was going on, like the happenings, this is a whole nother aspect of the 60s people don't talk
Right.
about the happenings. There was the guy that came up with like performance theory. I forget, professor, I think University of Chicago. And so he had these things where they had all the students would strip naked, or the performers would strip naked. They had these theater pieces that were almost like live orgies. There was some where they sacrificed, they killed a goat and stuff like that
Ooh.
during the theater piece. With lights, with all these things. So this was your elite culture, right? You have your also immersive multimedia art installations. So this is connected with art installations as well. Um, and um, and then again, the flashing rhythmic lights, that's called photic driving. Photic driving, like psychic driving. Cameron had psychic driving, but photic driving, or this was the first really in terms of brain research, right? As soon as the brain itself, um, you could say external stimuli, research on the brain, right? One of the basic things was strobe effects, right? Flashing lights, right? You have that the Brian Jensen, the boxing, and we probably talked about that. Where you stare at the box, you go into these hallucinatory states.
Right.
But the flashing light, flicker effect, I ask everybody, turn on Fox News, turn on your TV,
Right.
watch it with your eyes closed.
Right.
Close your eyes and see the flash effects. See these rhythmic flashings. Okay, so this is one of the major induction points, right? Is the flashing lights, and of course, again, we have it with the with the with the 1960s light shows, and I mentioned the radical theater. So
Have you ever heard of a book called, my notes show, W. Walter Gray, The Living Brain from 1953?
Well, Walter Gray, that is one of the first people that worked on this. Okay, so Walter Gray, the living brain, is absolutely who I'm referring to, right? So W. Walter Gray was a central figure in this, and actually pioneered a lot of these researches, and I believe he had developed this kind of these control rooms, just like seen in the Ipcress files. Okay, for research, right, where the patients were um, were
Exposed to this stuff, right? Yeah.
yeah yeah, and so the room this is really fascinating. Actually, is these rooms? These were used in the in actual research and experimental things, right? So what was done in the Ipcress files was being done by people like W. Walter Gray. And there's I think I have a photo in a book of his room. But he was a wild guy, man. And also, again, these are the kind of the main. Um, Let me see if I can just pull an image of that. Um, I'm trying to find. Okay, but anyways,
Revelation by Flicker. That's the name of one of his chapters. The
yes,
revelation by, like you're just talking about the TV flickering. Like imagine that dark revelation of a TV flickering and what people are getting from that. Holy smokes. It has to be intentional, man. It has to be.
Look at this, but look at this book. Uh, let's see where you Revelation by Flickr.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Chapter 4.
totems, toys, and tools.
Some realities for Frankenstein. Holy smokes.
Yeah, and he was one of those people that believed that computers and organ grinders, automatic. What is that? I can't. It's a little blurry. Automatic trans and other primitives.
Where are you seeing that?
In the number five,
5.
fourth
Oh,
line
yeah.
down.
Computers and organ grinders, automatic trams, and other primitives is what it says.
Automatic trams. That's the population. He was a strong believer in the fact that the operators, right, those in the superior class, need to be able to control the brains of the public. And in fact, in fact, he was, how do you say it? He was very much, very much oriented um, towards that, and so I mean, he said, we need to be able to control the minds of the population since we're learning this stuff. The trams, right? Tram is like a tram, automated tram, primitives. That's you. You're a thing, operator and thing, right? So this was the actual paradigm. Um, I don't. So yeah, quite interesting.
Yeah, this is just another piece of this puzzle, this flashing lights puzzle preceded the 60s. It was implemented or like operationalized in the 60s, but this guy's one of the people talking about W. Gray Walter, the living brain. Pretty wild.
Yeah, so they're inducing different states. One of the things he realized or discovered was that people could be, they were inducing like these like trance states, hallucinatory states, right, through the flicker effects, inducing, regression or whatever. But with the hypnosis, they realized the subjects, at least with the EEG, the brainwave readings, they were like normal. They could be in a state of hypnosis and still function normally and not even be aware that they were in hypnosis. So, and all this research on Flickr, this was the beginning point of a lot of the stuff, right? Of course, you go into psychosurgery, the lobotomy, right?
Yeah, Sargent was involved in that. A lot of those guys talk about psychosurgery, and they don't. A lot of those experiments don't exist in the public field. Like some of this stuff had to have been classified, like what is it, Delgado and all these other characters. But I think even Jolly West had stuff on psychosurgery. He believed in a psychosurgerized population. Like these guys think that they're almost like gods, like they can change people's brains. Pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
and Igaz Mona is like, if I the guy invented lobotomy, if I think I'm correct in this, like he was on like a hiking trip with some of his patients and friends. He performed a lobotomy with a friggin', one of the rock picks. You know what I mean? The
Wow.
knives on the trail. He just did a lobotomy.
Wow.
I mean, these guys
It's
were.
hard to believe it existed. Like literally shoving something up into your prefrontal cortex to solve problems. Like, wow, that's so crazy. I mean, it goes into Bateson and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how it ends.
Well, and then, and then, Artie Lang, the divided mind, right? So he was the one who promoted that the schizophrenics are actually sane. The world is schizophrenic. The world isn't sane. These people are sane. And so he, in his house, right? Artie Lang, very kind of charismatic guy, whatever, but he had his center, and he would just hang out with his schizophrenics and engage in their delusions, right? Engage in them and let them.
Wow.
And then there was one guy there who turned out to be a psychopath, a killer, and there's some things went a little bit south there with Mr. Artie Lang. But the divide itself, this was the major point, right? With this idea, and then the original name, one of the original names for psychedelics was schizophrenogens. Schizophrenogens.
Wow.
They
Wow.
generate schizophrenia.
Wow. That's disturbing.
Yeah, schizophrenogens. Okay. So that's an agent, right? External agents. And so again, in this, the hypnosis is done through the vectors, right, of technology. Light, sound, right? And then with um, the induced the induced commands. Can you
Right.
just give
What
me?
was his forget about the Ipcress noise? Now listen to me. That was the trigger word. So much like the Queen of Diamonds and Manchurian Candidate, they had a trigger thing, which was listen to me. That was his. That's the kind of repetitive phrase, right?
Yeah, just give me 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem.
Yep.
Guys, thanks for listening. Got 230 listeners, live listeners. Thanks, everybody. Go check out Hans Uter, his website. It's www.hansuter.com. You can check out our 25 shows. I think he has posted some of them on um his podcast, but also you can check out those. You can just scroll through Hans Uter, Cybernetics. We've done MK Ultra for the masses. We're going to have part 7 of the Manchurian Candidate fiction to fact. That's why I'm always bringing it up as a reference point. People say I should, wrap it up, but it still has a lot of, I think, relevance, and it's a good basis point of understanding some of these things that are happening. This movie's another great basis point. Actually, is the Ipcress file or the Parallax View, but yeah, you can check those shows out at William Ramsey Investigates. I do have my YouTube channel back, so you can check out some of my old stuff at William Ramsey Investigates. I'm actually streaming there right now, there and X. So I really appreciate the listens and the some people have restreamed this on X, so I appreciate that too. And so go check out that stuff. Like I said, on Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific, it'll be part 7 of our Manchurian Candidate fiction to fact. And we're going to go into another big wig. We've mentioned Sargent today, Cameron, Huxley, Weiner, Lang, but we're going to go into one of the other big wigs, Estabrooks, a 500-page document. There's a lot of stuff there, and it's really foundational, and it actually shows the kind of operational nature of the stuff, that this wasn't an abstraction of guys writing academic papers, but an academic literally talking to J. Edgar Hoover in the 30s and teaching him. And it's kind of because the listener can put themselves in the place of, in the same kind of situation as Hoover, may not understand this, because the dialogue between, and the correspondence really between Estabrooks and Hoover is, Hoover doesn't understand, and it's Tolson and some of these other characters at the FBI, they don't understand, but they start to realize, oh, now I'm getting it. You're trying to tell me this. Okay, how can we use this in a criminal sense? How could we use it as criminals? So he's using it from law enforcement. You see it play out over this 500 pages. So it's really interesting. And it also is interesting for me as such a precursor to Dulles. So this is like 20 years before that. So you have to kind of move the scale, the historical understanding of a lot of this stuff back to pre-World War II and World War II, really, like just like Hans was talking about at the very beginning of our talk. I have about 10 more minutes, Hans. I got to run out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can do the part 2 if you feel like there's other stuff, but I think we kind of, for me, I kind of get kind of head towards the wrap up phase. We're at like 80 minutes already. It's gone really fast.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, it's I wish we could show the thing. I mean, I do have this article that I came across that's quite interesting, and in fact,
Is it this one?
Yeah, brainwashing the cybernetic spectator. So this is quite an interesting analysis of this. So again, the film was heavily connected with cybernetics, in a certain way, with the flotation tank of John Lilly and your home theater system, right? When you're there, your home immersive environment. Okay. But yeah, so this is quite an interesting interesting read there. And I can conclude there's a couple passages that I took from the book, and maybe I'll just let you comment on them. So in the book, some of this stuff, like the actual technical aspect, is not fleshed out. But again, how did he know the 1960s were about to blow up, right? How did you know suddenly the psychedelic light shows in a couple of years. It's right there, right? And suddenly it's your rock show, it's your television, it's all around you. So that's what makes it quite interesting, right? In a sense, that's why I mentioned that Operators and Things, that book, which is also very important um, to look at, in that you in a sense you're in an environment, it's not just, it's the ecology, right? It is a psychological um ecology. It's the extension of the human nervous system into the media, right? The media acts and operates as an extension of the human nervous system, just like, the most extreme form of that, of course, as a prosthesis, is the neural implant, right? I got one of them. How's it working? It just got hacked. Anything I do bad, I'll say my neural implant got hacked, my Neuralink. But real quick, I'll just go over these last just a few paragraphs from the book, um, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
please do. Yeah.
quote, okay, quote, they had three basic systems: the house system, for want of a better word, depended on mental isolation. They used phony ambassadors to convince the subject he was completely alone, switched lights on and off to give you 1 hour long day or a 36-hour long night. It was all to throw the mind off balance. The beginning is this severing of connections, a feeling of isolation and physical and mental fatigue and uncertainty, tension and uncertainty about what will please and what won't please. Any sort of humor is dangerous to the technique. The third phase is using the information so far gained to create what is technically called abreaction. This is caused by intense mental work, indoctrination, by meetings, in fact, by overwork and stress, and is the culmination of all brainwashing. Abreaction is a point of no return. Um, so just a quote, from the book. And I don't know if you want to comment on that, William. We have time.
I don't. Somebody just subbed to you. Somebody asked the question. I've never heard of the Ground Star conspiracy. Somebody mentioned this. That's total news to me. So I'll have to check that out. Let me see if I can bring that up. But it seems to have similar themes. It's electroshock, water submersion, execution threats to amnesia. So these kind of same thing, same themes. George Papard was in it. Um, yeah, that's not. I'm glad. I mean, I learned so much from these great comments. So I don't know
Yeah.
about that. Does anybody have any questions for Hans or any questions for the
Yeah. Yeah.
cast?
I
Anything?
won't go in any more material because I think we're
I
sort of
think I think we've covered anything. I mean, is there anything about the film? I just highly recommend this film, guys. It's really a great movie, and it's a great watch. And it's kind of nice to know kind of what's going on, like a general synopsis, because it's kind of hard to keep track of some of the characters, in my opinion. But then you kind of get it wrapped up at the end. It's like a John le Carre, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy type story of in the Cold War, much like a Manchurian. There's like recurring theme, like similar themes in Manchurian Candidate and the Ipcress File. But see anybody questions? Disney's a massive rabbit hole. It sure is. Great show. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for listening. Great to see everybody here. Murder by Maestro, remember you. Ivana, remember you. Um, we had about 250 live listeners. It's pretty great without much fanfare or promotion. So thanks a lot for everybody for listening. Please, if you like the shows, please retweet them, reshare them. I do not have an ad budget. It's just me. My team is me. I do all the scheduling. I do all the technical stuff. So anytime if you like the shows, I really do appreciate it if you do share them. And go to Hans Uter's website, sign up there, sign up for the Resonant State.
yeah.
He's
And so
really one of the best. I mean, he's really every time I talk to him, I've learned something new, some other angle of this. So thanks so much for your time, Hans. Thanks for coming on the show. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up?
no, I hope everyone checks the movie out. And so I've got YouTube, Resonant State on YouTube, and then I'm on BitChute. That's under Hans Utter. Still, I haven't changed the name. Eyes Wide Open. Hans Utter Investigates, and then I'm also on Spotify, the Resonant State. So please check it out. I've got some stuff up there. I'm trying to get this going. I got like 22 views on a YouTube video. I was like, man, break out the scotch. Said a low, no, but so yeah, so it's definitely worth checking out, and maybe we can continue with some of these examinations, because a lot of these threads are, we can see the full-blown manifestation now, but it's very good to go back and see the generation period, and then also it helps to see that a lot of things that sometimes may perceived to be overwhelming are actually they're components of different things. But then also notice that, okay, like for example, the flashing light effects, notice that some of these sonic implants, it just, I think it's actually interesting just to start seeing, wow, there is a stroboscopic effect, and these are things that are they're not operating on your consciousness, it's operating on the pre-consciousness, right? These are again, Pavlov was a physiologist. He's working on physiological responses. And his much more important experiment, the conditioned reflex, the dog salivating with the bell or whatever, or the thing, his most important work, in my estimation, at least that's available. Luria is also very important neuroscientist in the Soviet era, but his work on schismogenesis, right? Generating schizophrenia in dogs, which is the real, the really important research, which is, and it's simply, it's like they would have, like the dog has like say a golden circle, and they get fed. Then the circle becomes an ellipse. They get fed. Then the circle, it's back to the golden circle. They don't get fed. And then it becomes a red circle. Then it becomes an oval. So changing these shapes, modifying them, would induce actually complete mental breakdown.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Think about this in terms of value systems, beliefs, news, COVID. This is going to happen. This is not going to happen. Think about Trump. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Okay, whatever.
Right. No, it's so important. These struggle sections are like behavioral psychology to break you down. It's like intentional, just repetitive phrase. You're not good enough. It's all this demoralization. So behavioral psychology is really important. And all this stuff is based in that. And the view is not like, these aren't spiritual books. These aren't like moral codes or anything. They're just talking about manipulating you physiologically, just like you said, Pavlov. So you got to really be careful out there, and it's really dangerous. It's good to be aware of this stuff. But Hans, thanks so much for your time. Really, another great show.
Yeah. Thanks, Jordan. And one last thing I'll say is there's a lot of things out there that people are taking for. I won't mention the guy's name. I saw he was some type of whatever, new technique, healer, and I started listening to it, and I'm like, this is absolute very damaging mind control stuff. The dude's charging $7,000 a seminar. There's also even some of this, the binaural beat stuff, which I make it. There's things out there that are techniques like the EC, which the rapid eye movement stuff. These are even Wim Hof, some of that Wim Hof breathing stuff. You're going to stimulate ascending, descending, nervous systems. You're going to get a feeling of peace because you just flashed out your brain, right? You just fried out your nervous system. So of course you're going to shut down. You're going to have a nice feeling of cessation. So just watch out for misdirected pathways, especially people that purport to offer things or techniques. I mean, not saying that stuff doesn't work in this and that, but I've just encountered a lot of this out there. Some of it, using these types of mechanisms. But again,
$7,000 equates to like 30 pieces of silver back 2,000 years ago. So it's like the same amount Judas was bribed. Like somebody made that connection. I don't know if it's true, but it seems like it's altogether fitting. Like here's 7,000 bucks or whatever to promote genocide state Israel, or I don't know. Anyway, all right. I got to run. Till next time, we could do a part 2 if you feel like there's another stuff. People go follow Hans Uter, hansuter.com. full name HANSUTTERD.com, and the Resonant State, which is a great title for a podcast, very unique. Go check that out, and go check out this movie. It really is worth your time. The Ipcress File. Thanks so much for your time.
Yep. Thanks everybody for doing it. And William, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, peace. Stay there.